Commander June stepped off the transport shuttle onto Outpost Cygnus, his new home for the next year. The space station hung in orbit around the neutral planet Terrace, chosen specifically for this historic diplomatic mission. Humans and Verulans, meeting officially for the first time. The docking bay smelled of metal and recycled air. June straightened his uniform and checked his translator pin. 6 years of training had prepared him for this moment, or so he thought. Commander Kim June, welcome to Outpost Cygnus. A tall human officer greeted him with a salute. I'm Lieutenant Park. We've been expecting you. Thank you, Lieutenant. How are our guests adjusting? The Verulans arrived 3 days ago. They seem to be adapting well to the station's atmosphere. First official meeting is scheduled for 1400 hours today. June nodded. That gave him just enough time to settle in and review his notes once more. The Verulan language was complex, full of chirps and trills that human vocal cords couldn't replicate. The translators would do most of the work, but understanding their cultural cues was his responsibility. Lieutenant Park led him through the station's main corridor. The walls were deliberately neutral, no human or Verulan cultural symbols. A fresh start. Here we are, sir. Your quarters. Park punched in a code, and the door slid open. June thanked him and quickly unpacked his few belongings. On his desk, he placed the only personal item he'd brought, a small stone from his grandmother's garden in Busan, a reminder of home. At 1350, June made his way to the meeting room. His heart beat faster as he approached. This wasn't just his first encounter with the Verulans. It was humanity's first official diplomatic contact. The meeting room doors opened. Inside, 5 Verulans stood around the circular table. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with feathered crests on their heads that ranged from deep blue to vibrant purple. Their skin was pale with a slight blue tint, and their eyes, 3 of them on each face, blinked independently. Greetings, June said, bowing slightly. The translator pin on his chest converted his words into the musical language of the Verulans. 4 of the Verulans tilted their heads in what June recognized as their version of a greeting. But the 5th, a female with striking red-tipped feathers, took a sudden step back. Her feathers puffed outward, and her middle eye widened. June froze, wondering if he'd made some cultural error. He maintained his diplomatic smile while the other Verulans looked at their companion with what seemed like confusion. The leader of the Verulan delegation, who had introduced himself as Kido, made a soft trilling sound. Please excuse Diplomat Neri. The journey was long, and we are all adjusting. June nodded understandingly. Of course. Shall we begin? The meeting proceeded smoothly, but June couldn't help noticing how Neri kept her distance. When he spoke, she looked away. When he moved around the table to examine the star charts, she shifted to maintain maximum distance between them. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. The other Verulans engaged with him normally during meals and planning sessions. They were reserved but polite. Only Neri showed signs of what June could only interpret as fear. When he entered the botanical garden where she was studying earth plants, she dropped her specimen container and hurried out. In the dining hall, she chose seats far from him. During briefings, she positioned herself on the opposite side of the room. After a week of this, Jum decided to consult with Dr. Hana, the station's xenobiologist. I'm concerned I'm doing something wrong, June explained as they sat in her lab, or that perhaps something about me is offensive to Verulan culture. Dr. Hana adjusted her glasses. I've noticed this too. It's not subtle. Has she said anything to you? You've spent more time studying their physiology. Nothing direct. Dr. Hana pulled up some recordings on her tablet. But look at these readings from our last joint session. The screen showed bio readings from the Verulans during a standard meeting. 4 showed normal patterns, but Neri's readings spiked whenever June spoke or moved nearer. That's a fear response, June asked, or something very similar. Heart rate increases, respiration changes, pupil dilation. In humans, we'd call it a fight or flight response. June frowned. But why? I followed all the cultural protocols. That's what puzzles me. Dr. Hana set down her tablet. The other Verilans don't react this way to you or any other humans. It's specifically you, and specifically Neri. Could it be something personal? Maybe I resemble someone who harmed her. Dr. Hana shook her head. We're the first humans they've ever met in person. Their species only detected our radio signals 30 years ago. Then what? I don't know, June. But I suggest patience. We still know so little about them. Their social structures, their beliefs, their perceptions, most of it is a mystery. That night, June couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Neri's reaction to him. It wasn't just discomfort or dislike. It was genuine fear, the way prey looks at a predator. The next morning, he found himself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The door whispered open behind him, and he turned, expecting to see another human crew member. Instead, there stood Neri. Her feathers were flattened close to her head, a sign of distress, according to his training. For a moment, they stared at each other. June stayed perfectly still, not wanting to frighten her further. Then Neri spoke, her voice soft through the translator. You do not know, do you? Know what? June asked gently. She took a step closer, her three eyes studying his face intensely. Then she made a strange sound that his translator couldn't process. I'm sorry, June said. My translator didn't catch that. Some things cannot be translated, Neri replied. She reached into a pocket in her robes and pulled out a small circular device. When the time is right, you will understand. Before June could ask what she meant, she had placed the device on a nearby console and left the observation deck. June approached the device cautiously. It appeared to be some kind of data storage unit. He would need to have it examined before accessing it. Neri's behavior was strange, but one thing was clear. Her fear of him wasn't random. There was a reason, and somehow it was connected to something bigger than either of them understood. June stared at the project roster on his tablet and frowned. For the third time this month, Diplomat Neri had removed herself from any work group he was assigned to. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Computer, show me Neri's current assignment, he said. The screen changed to display a different botanical research team. The very team June had been originally scheduled to join before Neri requested a transfer. He rubbed his eyes tiredly. 3 weeks had passed since his arrival at Outpost Cygnus, and despite his best efforts, Neri's behavior toward him remained unchanged. If anything, it had become more pronounced. Still tracking our mysterious admirer? Lieutenant Park asked, sliding into the seat across from June in the station's cafeteria. She's not an admirer, June replied. She's terrified of me, and I still have no idea why. Park shrugged. Have you checked the security feeds? Sometimes people reveal more when they think no one's watching. The suggestion should have occurred to June earlier. As station commander, he had access to the security system. It wasn't something he used lightly, but this situation was affecting diplomatic relations. Later that evening, June sat alone in his office, reviewing footage from the past week. Most of it showed normal station operations, crew members working, eating, or relaxing. He was about to give up when something caught his eye. On the screen, Neri stood alone in a corridor, partially hidden behind a support column. The timestamp showed it was during June's regular morning inspection. The camera angle changed, and June could see himself walking past, unaware of her presence. The expression on Neri's face was complex. Fear was there, yes, her feathers slightly raised in alarm. But there was something else too, something that looked almost like fascination. She watched him intently, 3 eyes blinking at different rates, a sign of emotional conflict in Verilans, according to his cultural briefings. Over the next few days, June found more instances of this behavior. Neri keeping her distance, but observing him when she thought he wouldn't notice. It was unsettling. The breakthrough came during a routine diplomatic dinner. June was seated at the far end of the table from Neri, as had become the unspoken arrangement. Everyone wore translator pins to facilitate conversation, but midway through the meal, Neri's translator malfunctioned. She was speaking quietly to Quito, the Verulan leader, when her translator suddenly emitted a burst of static before resuming function. In that moment, a few phrases came through in raw Verulan language, then English. Cannot work with the marked one. The signs air, before returning to the untranslatable chirps and trills of her native tongue. The marked one. June pretended not to notice, continuing his conversation with Dr. Hana, but his mind raced. What did that mean? And what signs was she referring to? The next morning, June shared his findings with Ambassador Tai, the senior human diplomat on the station. The marked one. Ambassador Tai repeated, his weathered face thoughtful. That's quite specific terminology. Have you asked her directly about this? Every time I approach her, she finds a reason to leave, June said. I've tried sending messages, but she responds only with formal diplomatic language. Tai nodded. I'll speak with the Verulan delegation. Diplomatically, of course. Later that day, Ambassador Tai reported back to June. They're hiding something, he said bluntly. I've never seen such skilled evasion. When I asked about this marked one term, Quito changed the subject. When I pressed, he claimed it was a mistranslation. The others wouldn't meet my eyes, or any of their three eyes, for that matter. So we're no closer to answers, Jum said. Not necessarily. Their evasion tells us this isn't a personal quirk of Neri's. The entire delegation knows something they're not sharing. That night, Jum was walking back to his quarters when he noticed something odd on the wall beside his door. A series of symbols had been etched into the metal so faintly they were barely visible. They formed a circle around his doorframe. He didn't recognize the pattern, but he took photos and sent them to Dr. Hana. Her response came quickly. Meet me in my lab. Now. When June arrived, Dr. Hana was hunched over her computer, comparing his photos with ancient Verulan texts. Where did you find these? She asked without looking up. Around my door. They weren't there yesterday. Dr. Hana turned her screen toward him. On it was an old manuscript showing similar symbols. These are protective wards, June. They're from ancient Verulan religious practices, not used in modern times. At least, that's what they told us. Protective wards. Against what? That's the interesting part. She pointed to specific symbols. This one means containment. This one translates roughly to binding. And this one. She tapped the screen. This one means power untapped. June stared at the symbols. Someone put these around my quarters to, what? Protect themselves from me. Or to protect you, Dr. Hana suggested. Or to protect others from something in you. The texts aren't clear on how these wards function. This has gone far enough, Jum said, his patience wearing thin. I need to speak with Nari directly. Maybe that's not wise, Dr. Hana cautioned. If she's afraid enough to place ancient wards around your quarters, confronting her might. It wasn't Nari, came a voice from the doorway. They turned to see Quito standing there, his tall frame filling the entrance to the lab. I placed the wards, the Verulan leader continued, stepping inside. For your protection, Commander June. And perhaps for all of ours. What exactly am I being protected from? June asked. Quito's feathers rippled in what June had learned was a sign of internal conflict. From what you might become if Neri's fears are justified. And what are her fears? That is not my story to tell. Quito glanced at the symbols on the screen. But know this. Neri comes from a line of seers. Her fear is not of you, Commander, but of what you represent. Which is what? Change, Quito said simply. Profound, irreversible change. With that, the Verulan leader turned and left, leaving June and Dr. Hana staring after him, with more questions than answers. The cultural exchange exhibition was set up in the station's largest meeting space. Each species had prepared displays showcasing their history, art, and scientific achievements. June walked slowly through the virulence section, admiring intricate feather weavings and holographic models of their home planet. He paused at a display labeled Ancient Historical Archives. Unlike the other exhibits, this one seemed hastily assembled. The translation was incomplete, with many virulent symbols left untranslated. A series of images caught his eye, primitive cave paintings and stone carvings. They depicted tall, feathered virulents standing beside shorter, featherless beings. "These look almost like humans," June murmured to himself. "They are not meant to be part of this exhibition," came a voice behind him. June turned to find Quito, the virulent leader, watching him with all three eyes blinking rapidly. "I apologize if this material is sensitive," June said carefully. "It is contested history," Quito replied. "Some believe these are merely symbolic representations. Others think they are literal recordings of visitors." "Visitors? From where?" Quito's feathers flattened slightly. "The texts call them skywalkers, beings who came from beyond the stars." Before June could ask more questions, Quito was called away by another diplomat. But now June's curiosity was piqued. He took several discreet photos of the exhibit with his personal device before moving on. That evening, he showed the images to Dr. Hannah in her lab. "These markings here," he pointed, "they're different from modern virulent script, aren't they?" Dr. Hannah nodded, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is ancient virulent. Much of it hasn't been shared with our linguistic teams." She looked at him curiously. "How did you get these?" "They were part of the cultural exhibition." Quito said it was contested history, something about visitors from the sky. Dr. Hannah quickly pulled up translation software on her tablet. "This might take some time. The symbols have similarities to what we've studied, but there are significant differences." Over the next few days, June and Dr. Hannah worked in secret, using the station's linguistic database to decipher the ancient text. It was slow work, done during off hours to avoid drawing attention. "I think I've got something," Dr. Hannah said on the fourth night. "This section here speaks of those who walked out of light vessels and brought both wisdom and terror." "Sounds like a first contact scenario," June said. "Yes, but look at the date markers. If I'm translating correctly, this would have happened over 5,000 years ago." June stared at her. "That's impossible. Humans weren't capable of interstellar travel then. We barely had written language." They continued translating, piece by piece. The ancient text described beings who taught the virulents about stars and medicine, who could speak to machines with their minds and heal with their hands. "This part is interesting," Dr. Hannah said, pointing to a new section they decoded. "It describes physical characteristics of these visitors." June leaned closer to read. "They stood shorter than the people, with no feathers upon their skin. Their faces held only two eyes, but those marked as vessels of the great change carried the signs of their power. One eye blue as the day sky, one green as the forest." A chill ran down June's spine. He reached up unconsciously to touch his face near his eyes. One blue, one green. Heterochromia, a rare genetic condition he'd had since birth. "It's probably coincidence," Dr. Hannah said, but her voice lacked conviction. Before they could discuss it further, the station's alarm blared. The overhead speaker announced, "Warning, unexpected solar flare detected. Radiation shields activating. All personnel report to designated safe areas." June rushed to the command center. The view screen showed a massive eruption from the system's star, sending dangerous radiation toward the station. "Status report," he demanded. "Shields at 60% and rising," reported a technician. "But we have personnel still outside in the observation dome. The automatic doors malfunctioned." "Who?" "Two virulents. One is Diplomat Neri." Without hesitation, June headed for the nearest airlock. "I'm going to get them." "Sir, radiation levels are already dangerous. The next shield layer activates in 3 minutes. You won't make it back in time." Then I'll have to be quick. June grabbed an emergency suit and rushed through the station corridors. When he reached the observation dome, he could see the two Verilans trapped inside. One was injured, with Neri trying desperately to move them toward the door. The radiation meter on his suit was already showing dangerous levels. The observation dome's glass wasn't designed to block this kind of radiation. June overrode the door lock and stepped inside. We need to move now. Neri looked up, her feathers puffing in surprise and fear. The door is malfunctioning. Timmy is injured. I'll carry him. You follow close behind me. Without waiting for a response, June lifted the injured Verilan. Something strange happened as he did. His hands seemed to move with practiced efficiency, finding the exact right places to support the alien's unusual physiology. Knowledge he shouldn't have flooded his movements. This way, he said, feeling an odd certainty about which route to take. Instead of returning the way he came, he led them down a service corridor he'd never used before. Neri followed, her three eyes wide with what looked like shock. They reached a secondary airlock just as the station's voice announced, "Final radiation shield activating in 30 seconds." June punched in an override code he didn't remember learning. The door opened, and they slipped inside just as the shields locked into place with a deep, resonating clang. Medical teams rushed to take the injured Verilan. As the adrenaline faded, June realized what he had done. He had known exactly how to lift a Verilan without causing further injury. He had known about a service corridor that wasn't on his station maps. He had known an override code he'd never been taught. He turned to find Neri staring at him intensely. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," June admitted. "I just knew." "The old texts speak true," Neri said. Her posture had changed. She still maintained distance from him, but the quality of her fear seemed different now, mixed with something that looked almost like reverence. "You are indeed the vessel." "Vessel of what? What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Neri performed a formal Verilan gesture he had never seen before, a complex movement of her hands that ended with her three eyes closed briefly. "When the time comes," she said, "you will remember everything." As she walked away, June noticed that the other Verilans who had gathered were watching him with a new intensity. Whatever had happened during the crisis had changed something fundamental in how they saw him. And deep inside, June felt it too. A strange sensation that memories not his own were trying to surface from somewhere deep within his mind. "Please hold still, Commander," the medical officer said as the scanner hummed above June's head. "Just a routine check after radiation exposure." June lay on the examination table, trying not to fidget. After the solar flare incident 3 days ago, all personnel exposed to radiation were required to undergo medical screening. He wasn't concerned. His exposure had been minimal thanks to the protective suit. The scanner beeped, and the medical officer frowned at his tablet. "Is something wrong?" June asked. "Probably just a calibration error." The officer reset the scanner. "Let's try again." The second scan produced the same results. The officer called Dr. Min, the station's chief medical officer, who studied the readings with growing interest. "Your neural patterns are unusual," Dr. Min said finally. "I'd like Dr. Hanna to take a look at this. She has more experience with comparative xenobiology." An hour later, June sat in Dr. Hanna's lab as she compared his scanned results with baseline human readings. "I've never seen anything like this," she said, tapping the screen where colorful patterns showed brain activity. "These neural pathways shouldn't be active in humans. They're typically dormant sections of the brain." "What does that mean?" June asked. "I'm not sure. I'd like to do a deeper analysis, including genetic sequencing." June agreed, and over the next 2 days, Dr. Hanna ran extensive tests. "I found something," she told him when the results came in. "You carry genetic markers that are extremely rare. Most geneticists dismiss them as junk DNA, leftover code from our evolutionary past." She showed him a complex display of DNA sequencing. "But in you, These sequences aren't junk. They're active, and they appear to be affecting your neural structure. Is it dangerous? June asked. I don't think so. These patterns have likely been present since birth. They may explain your heterochronia, the different colored eyes. June thought about the ancient Verulan text they had translated. Vessels of the great change with one blue eye, one green eye. Could this be connected to what we found in those Verulan archives? He asked quietly. Dr. Hanna glanced around to ensure they were alone. I've been thinking the same thing, but it seems impossible. Before they could discuss it further, June's communicator beeped with an urgent message. Commander, Diplomat Neri is requesting a private meeting with you. She says it's of utmost importance. 20 minutes later, June waited in a small conference room. The door slid open, and Neri entered alone. For the first time since they'd met, she approached him directly, without showing signs of fear. Thank you for meeting with me, Commander, she said, her translator converting her trills into clear English. What I must tell you cannot be shared with others yet. I'm listening, Jum said. Neri sat across from him, her three eyes studying his face intently. First, I must apologize for my behavior. My fear was not personal. It was ancestral. Ancestral. Yes, my people possess what you might call genetic memory. Knowledge passed down through our DNA from generation to generation. June leaned forward. You remember things your ancestors experienced. Not all things. Only powerful experiences imprint on our genetic code. Moments of great joy, terrible fear, profound discovery. She paused. When I first saw you, your eyes, one blue and one green, I experienced a memory that was not mine. A memory of fear and wonder from thousands of years ago. The Skywalkers, Jum said quietly. Neri's feathers rippled in surprise. You know of them. I saw references in your cultural exhibition. Dr. Hanna and I translated parts of the text. Then you know that beings like you visited our world long ago. Beings like me. Humans didn't have space travel thousands of years ago. They were human in appearance, Neri said, but they possessed abilities beyond normal human limits. They could heal with touch, sense danger before it came, communicate across vast distances with their minds. June thought about how he had instinctively known how to carry the injured Verulan, how he had known about the service corridor and override code. My ancestor was a spiritual leader, Neri continued. She documented the visitors carefully. They claimed to come from Earth, though our people had no knowledge of your world then. They arrived in vessels of light, but could not return home. What happened to them? June asked. Some died. Others lived among us, sharing their knowledge. They had a leader, a woman with eyes like yours, one blue and one green. She predicted that our peoples would meet again when the stars aligned for what she called the Great Change. June felt a chill run through him. And you think I'm connected to this prophecy? I know you are. Neri reached into a pocket and removed a small crystalline device. This contains the complete records of the Skywalkers, passed down through my family line. When you saved me during the solar flare, you moved exactly as the text described. You knew things you should not have known. She placed the crystal on the table between them. The Skywalkers believed they were not the first humans to find Virala. They believed they were descendants of earlier travelers who had returned to Earth thousands of years before them. That's impossible, Jun said. There's no historical record of such contact. Yet you carry their genetic markers, Neri replied. The same rare patterns that gave them their abilities. The same patterns that are now activating in you. Jun remembered Dr. Hanna's findings. The active junk DNA, the unusual neural pathways. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because events are accelerating. The prediction speaks of signs that would precede the Great Change. Unusual stellar activity, like the solar flare, awakening abilities in the marked ones. And, she hesitated, the return of the vessels that brought the Skywalkers to Virala. Spaceships? from thousands of years ago, not ships as you understand them. The texts describe them as bridges between worlds that open only when certain cosmic conditions align. Jun tried to process everything he was hearing. It sounded impossible, yet it would explain so much. His unusual genetic markers, the knowledge he shouldn't possess, Nari's initial fear of him. What exactly is this great change that the prophecy mentions? He asked. Nari's feathers flattened against her head, a sign of deep concern. That remains unclear. Some interpretations suggest a joining of our species, a sharing of knowledge and culture that will advance both civilizations beyond measure. And other interpretations. Her middle eye blinked rapidly. Others believe it foretells destruction, that the bridges between worlds were closed for a reason, and reopening them will bring catastrophe. Which do you believe? I believe, Nari said carefully, that the key lies within you, Commander Jun. Your genetic memory contains answers even you don't yet know you possess. She stood to leave. Study the crystal. It contains tests the Skywalkers developed to awaken dormant memories. But be cautious. Once awakened, such knowledge cannot be forgotten. As she reached the door, she turned back to him. The fear you saw in me was real, Commander. But now I feel something else as well. Hope. Perhaps you are not just a vessel of change, but a guide through it. After she left, Jun sat alone, staring at the crystal that supposedly held answers to questions he hadn't even known to ask. If Nari was right, the truth about who he really was, and what he might become, lay encoded in his very DNA, waiting to be remembered. Jun lay on the medical table, electrodes attached to his temples and forehead. The crystal Nari had given him rested in a specially designed holder near his head, connected to Dr. Hana's equipment by thin wires. Are you sure about this? Dr. Hana asked, her finger hovering over the activation button. I need to know, Jun replied simply. They had spent 3 days studying the crystal's contents. It contained detailed instructions for a procedure the ancient visitors had called memory awakening. According to the texts, it could unlock genetic memories buried deep in human DNA, memories passed down through countless generations. The scan will stimulate specific neural pathways, Dr. Hana explained. Based on these readings, you carry an unusually high concentration of these memory markers. The experience might be intense. Jun took a deep breath. I'm ready. Dr. Hana activated the program. The crystal glowed with a soft blue light. Jun felt a gentle tingling sensation in his head, which gradually intensified. The room around him began to fade. Suddenly, he wasn't on the medical table anymore. He was standing on a hillside, looking up at unfamiliar stars. Next to him stood a woman in a metallic suit. Her face looked strangely familiar. Captain Min, someone called from behind. The wormhole is destabilizing. We need to return to the ship. The woman, Captain Min, turned, and Jun saw her face clearly. One blue eye, one green eye. His eyes. It's too late, she said calmly. The passage is collapsing. We're stranded here. The scene shifted. Now Jun saw Captain Min standing before a group of tall, feathered beings, early Verilans. She was older, speaking in their language. Our children will carry our knowledge, she was saying. Though we cannot return to Earth, part of us will live on. When the stars align again, the passage will reopen. Our descendants will remember. More images flashed through Jun's mind. Humans living among Verilans. Children born with mixed genetic traits. The first appearance of heterochromia, a side effect of adapting to Varala's atmosphere and diet. Generation after generation, the human bloodline thinning but never disappearing entirely. Then he saw ships, more advanced than Captain Min's expedition, arriving on Varala. A second wave of human explorers, amazed to find traces of human DNA among the Verilan population. These visitors too became stranded when their wormhole collapsed. Before they vanished from history, they left behind predictions, a prophecy that one day, when humans and Verilans officially met, someone with the ancient genetic markers would return to Varala. This return would coincide with the reopening of the wormhole, the passage between worlds. With a gasp, Jun returned to the present. He sat up quickly, nearly pulling off the electrodes. "What happened?" Dr. Hana asked, rushing to his side. "Your brain activity went off the charts." "I remember," Jun said, his voice hoarse. "Not my memories. Hers. Captain Min. My ancestor." Over the next hour, Jun described everything he had seen. The first human expedition to Varala, traveling through a natural wormhole they had discovered near Earth, their inability to return when the wormhole collapsed, the integration of humans into Varalan society. "So the heterochromia, my different colored eyes, it's a marker of this hybrid ancestry?" Dr. Hana asked. "Yes, it first appeared in children born on Varala. Something about the planet's atmosphere affected human genetics." Jun touched his face near his eyes. "I'm a descendant of those first explorers. Their genetic memory has been dormant in my DNA for thousands of years. And the second group of humans, the Skywalkers from the Varalan texts. They came much later, through the same spatial corridor. They found humans had already visited Varala and left descendants, but they too became stranded." Jun stood up, feeling a new certainty. "We need to check the long-range sensors. If the prophecy is correct, the wormhole should be reforming." In the command center, they directed the station's sensors toward the coordinates Jun somehow knew with perfect clarity. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then, a small anomaly appeared on the screen. "What is that?" Lieutenant Park asked. "Spatial distortion," the science officer replied. "Very faint, but growing." Jun watched the readings with a sense of déjà vu. "It's happening. The passage is reopening." Word spread quickly through the station. Within hours, both human and Varalan officials had gathered in the command center. Ambassador Ta looked skeptical. "You're suggesting that humans visited Varala thousands of years ago. That's impossible." "Not according to their historical records," Jun said, gesturing to Nardi and Kito. "And not according to the genetic memory I've accessed." Kito stepped forward. "Our most ancient texts speak of this moment, the return of the bridge between worlds." The science officer interrupted. "The anomaly is expanding rapidly. It's forming a stable wormhole structure." On the main view screen, they watched as space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a swirling vortex of light. "All ships in the area have been warned away," Lieutenant Park reported. "No unusual radiation detected." Jun turned to Neri. "You feared me because you knew what my return to Varalan space meant." She nodded. "My ancestral memory showed me both possibilities, unity or destruction. The texts weren't clear which would come to pass when the Marked One returned and the bridge reopened. And now we will find out." She gestured to the observation deck. "Would you join me to witness it?" Together, they stood before the vast window of the observation deck. The wormhole had stabilized, a shimmering portal against the backdrop of stars. Scans showed it connected directly to Earth's solar system, a passage that should have been physically impossible. "What happens now?" Jun asked quietly. "According to the prophecy, the bridge opens the way for the great change." Nari's feathers rippled with emotion. "A joining of paths that were separated long ago." "Your ancestor feared this moment," Jun said, understanding now. She saw the reopening as a potential threat. "Yes, but she also saw hope." Nari turned to face him. "The genetic memory contains both warnings and promises. The outcome depends on what comes through the passage." As if in response to her words, the wormhole pulsed. The station's sensors detected something emerging from its center. "A ship," Lieutenant Park's voice announced over the comm. "Unknown configuration. It's broadcasting a message on all frequencies." The message played throughout the station, a simple greeting in both ancient Varalan and an archaic form of Earth language that predated any known record. "They're from both worlds," Jun realized, a profound understanding washing over him. Not just human, not just virulent. They're what we could become together. The ship approached slowly, its design unlike anything built by modern humans or virulents. It was the culmination of both civilizations' potential, from a timeline that might now become possible. The Great Change, Neri whispered. Not an ending, but a beginning. As the mysterious vessel drew closer to the station, Jun felt a strange sensation, as if pieces of a puzzle long scattered across time and space were finally coming together. His genetic memory, Neri's ancestral warnings, the prophecy of the Skywalkers, all of it had led to this moment. They're requesting permission to dock, came the announcement. Jun looked at Neri, seeing in her three eyes the same mixture of fear and hope he felt himself. Whatever came next would change both their species forever. Let them come, he said. It's time we met our future. Retriclad can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.